What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Apex, the podcast. Ladies and gents, we had a very weird week. But the boys, Weeps and Enoch, doing some subathons because they were gone. They had the week off, so they're trying to recoup some of that time and recoup some of that community, which is fine with me because I am joined by AyeJHawk once again, back-to-back weeks here on the pod. AyeJHawk, thanks for dropping in once again, man. You're saving my bacon multiple weeks in a row.
I got you. You know, that's all I got to say. I don't know.
Yeah,
I got you.
This is great. So I'm feeling good. I also got a very good progress report from people about last week's last 15 minutes of last week's episode, which I had said was the greatest 15 minutes of podcasting I'd ever done. And you didn't agree, but some were saying it was one of the best episodes, best endings of an episode ever. So
the only reason that I'm not going to counter you on this one, on the some were saying, is because I've seen people say this.
Yeah. So does that give me more credibility when I say some were saying?
No, not really.
Okay.
Yeah, no, honestly, for basically anything else apart from this, I still do not believe you. But for this specific one, I believe you purely because I don't know if you know, there's a guy who posts every episode on the competitive Apex subreddit. And so he just posts that y'all post the episode live and he links to the YouTube video.
You're allowed to do that?
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I thought
Finn
you could
used
never
to always
post.
do it.
Finn posted it in there?
Yeah, every single week, every episode.
I thought you weren't supposed to do like self-promo or something in Reddit.
You can, but only if it's like content about the scene. Like I post all my videos on there.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
That's like useful content. It's like you can't like I'm not every time I tweet, I can't go like post my tweet on there. You know, like it's got to be useful content. And so yeah, your episodes get posted every time by this guy. Shout out Wyatt.
Shout out Wyatt.
Yeah. Anyway, on the replies to all that, people were commenting on it. So someone even said, I hope AyeJHawk keeps coming back. We need someone to keep Wyatt in his place.
Nah, I don't like that. Yeah.
He said, I love the dichotomy between Wyatt and AyeJHawk's approach from silly speculative, that's you, to fairly analytical.
Are we sure that that's me
and then he said,
that's you? I think it might be reversed.
Now he said Wyatt and AyeJHawk, silly speculative and fairly analytical. So, you know, we do the first one. Second one, you were first, I was second, you know.
I don't know, I'm pretty analytical.
Then he goes, the second half was really fun to watch. These two have some interesting chemistry.
Yeah, I actually, like, in all seriousness, my favorite thing, because I went on AyeJHawk's stream yesterday watching the regional final, and AyeJHawk's breaking down all of these crazy, like, plays, like, going back in time, bringing up different teams, different strats. And then he was like, this is why I think this team is the best. And then I was just like, I don't know, because no, you were talking about Dak Prescott and why he was good.
I was about to say, we were not breaking down anything.
We weren't breaking down
Apex.
The game. We were talking about football. And you were trying to say why Brock Purdy isn't a top 10 quarterback. And then you brought up Dak. And then I said, have you ever thought about it, though, that Dak Prescott is very close to Whack Prescott? And that,
for the record, I didn't bring up Dak. The chat brought up Dak.
Chat brought up Dak, yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to bring up Dak being better than Brock Purdy.
I think he's better, but I know I'm a Cowboys fan, so people are going to argue I'm biased. So then on stream, I know some Niners listener or some guy who's a super casual is listening to this right now and is so upset. Brock Purdy just went to the Super Bowl. Wins are not a QB stat, okay? He's not a top 10 quarterback. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud. I can go on and on and on. That was only 9 right there. Trevor Lawrence, that's 10. Boom, 10 done. Right there. That's 10. Undebatable. Then there's a lot of debatable ones. So you can get into the Kirk Cousins, the Jared Goffs. You can get into a lot of debatable people.
Locks.
Definitely not Drew Lock. I probably even forgot somebody that's relevant. And once again, none of that was me bringing up Dak Prescott. and I still think he's better than Brock Purdy for the record. I don't think Brock Purdy's a bad quarterback.
No, yeah. He's not. Yeah.
He's not bad. And the fact that he's the cheapest contract in the league, it's good. I don't want to sidetrack us, but
yeah. No, I was just bringing that up to say the silly speculative thing because my only My
Your
only
response
difference was that
whack
Dak
press.
sounds very close to whack. And
Yeah.
that's just tough. That's just a tough look. It's like Kenny Pickett. You would probably argue that Kenny Pickett's not a great quarterback because the stats
He's
show
not.
it. I would argue and wouldn't have drafted Kenny Pickett because I'm not drafting a quarterback with the last name Pickett, like pick, like
Well,
interception. I would avoid
I
that.
argued that we shouldn't have drafted him in the first place because I said every quarterback in that class was terrible and none of them were worthy of a first-round pick. And I was right.
But Kenny Pickett had that sick play where he fake slid and scored a touchdown.
Which
If I
is
was an
illegal
NFL
now.
GM, I would have
It's
drafted
illegal
him
now.
strictly off of that.
He can't do that anymore, though. They immediately outlawed it.
Yeah, but see that's what you get with me and AyeJHawk. You get the yin and you get the yang. You get the peanut butter, you get the jelly. It's just two different styles, and they work.
I just want to say, before we get to all the Apex stuff, if any of you are sitting here going, this AyeJHawk guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I have a sports podcast where my takes have been documented for 3 to 4 years. I said CJ Stroud was better than Bryce Young last year. I was right. I said he should have gone number 1. I was right. I said that Mac Jones was just Jimmy Garoppolo 2.0 and he was going to be just another game manager. I was right. I said that Trey Lance was super raw and probably a complete bust. I was right. I said the Trevor Lawrence one. Everybody said that, though. I said that Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow were both better than Tua. I was right. Like, I'm just saying, I got a lot of great takes.
What was your worst take, though? What was the worst one you had?
My worst take I've probably had was I thought Jeff Okudah was going to become a top cornerback.
I did too.
He got drafted 3rd overall. He's like, okay, he's good. He's a starter, but he's not like Jalen Ramsey in his prime or anything.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to be really good. I also felt very strongly that Quentin Johnston could be really good. He had a terrible rookie year. We'll still see. I mean, there's still time for him. Those are probably the 2 worst takes I've had. But most of my takes have been pretty spot on. You said Garrett Wilson was the number 1 receiver in his class. That's been proven correct. I can't remember some of the other ones. I'm a very big believer you should never draft a running back in the first round. I think it's a complete waste of a pick. They've got a 6-year lifespan, and then they fall off. Look at Zeke. Yeah, I have it in my team. So the guy was literally leading the league in rushing 3 out of the first 4 years, and then all of a sudden, like 6-7 years in, he's done.
Yep, so, it's over.
Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, like the list goes on and on and on. So
there we go. Okay, so yeah, that's what you get with me and AyeJHawk. You just get the dichotomy.
You might want to move this to the end.
it's the duality of man, really.
I feel like all the people who are here for Apex can get real upset that I just went on that spiel.
No, you're fine, because guess what? We're about to hit Apex right fucking now. And it was a weird week. It was super weird because it's funny. So me and Enoch did try to record a segment, like a very tiny segment beforehand. I'm not going to put that in this episode or in this week because it was just really small and we didn't really know what was happening. But as me and Enoch were recording on Monday, I said, dude, are they playing the regional finals offline right now? And he goes, no. They're just fucking around. They're just messing around. They're not doing that. And I was like, okay, we finish. And then all of a sudden, you get off around 11 p.m. my time. So it would be like 1, 2 in the morning on the East Coast. It's like confirmed that they played the regional final offline and that they were going to upload it the next day. Apex Legends Esports, the Twitter account, tweeted out, hey, we know you guys already saw some of these results, but we're going to upload this. It's going to be live around 5 p.m. They start the stream. Rain Day talks a little bit about why they did it, like from like a statement from Apex Legends about why they were doing it this way. Led to a lot of questions, a lot of takes coming out about it. I guess I want to get your take first, Enoch. Or not Enoch, AyeJHawk. What exactly were your thoughts on the entire thing being played offline and then re-uploaded?
Well, I have a rather unique perspective because they had me on for the halftime show, which means that I watched it live because the only way that I could be there, because they were recording it and everything and like actually talk about the games was obviously being there live because they recorded the whole thing the day before. Like a lot of people were asking, did they just play the games and the commentary is being like doing live? No, the whole broadcast, everything, me being there, all happened Monday night. A bunch of people knew because Apex Legends status, you could see players' accounts, and if they're all in a lobby, coincidentally, no pro is streaming, and they're all in a lobby at the same time, and then they're all in the same game at the same time. So everybody knew. It got leaked. But I think it's fine. I even actually suggested it, I'm pretty sure, last week's episode on this pod. And I think I also suggested it on next week's pod. And they all made fun of me. They didn't make fun of me, but they were like, haha, there's no way you're going to get Imperial Hal not to stream it. Yeah, well, look who didn't stream it, buddy. But um, yeah, if they feel like there was any possible way that them doing it live could somehow lead to that situation happening again, I think safety was the better precaution. I know a lot of people are making fun of him for it and blah blah blah, but like the reality of the situation is if they're not on such short notice equipped to fully guarantee that the series will be safe if they do it live, then to me we can have the whole conversation about the security team and all that kind of stuff because that obviously needs to be had. But to me, the most important thing is we have to get these games done. We got to get them played because the LAN is in a month, and like this, we just got to get it done. And then we can talk about the security team and the fact that this all happened in the first place. Blah blah blah. Critique everybody all we want, but so if that's what they felt needed to happen, I'm cool with it because we got the games done. The regional finals is over. The LAN teams have been decided. It sucks for a lot of teams that didn't make it. It sucks that there had to be games that were replayed because I know Dark Zero, they were like sitting at 49 points or 48 points after game 3, technically, which is one of the games that Jen Burton quit. That game doesn't count on the day in the overall results. They finish at 49 points. So like they clearly did not have nearly as good as a day as they were having. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I think the only part that I was really upset about was the fact that the scores were getting leaked. Because if everybody knew it was happening, who cares?
That was the tough part.
As long as the games were still like completed and the scores weren't like known and nobody leaked it, then we're golden. Because then the rebroadcast and Wig's watch party and everybody's watch party would be great because none of the viewers know who won. They wouldn't know what happened. I would know, but like that'd be kind of it. So the scores being leaked was the thing that kind of screwed it up because then the main broadcast and all the watch parties, like everybody knew. All right, we know TSM won. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's the best of a bad situation. I would say, like, just to be on the other side of the coin, it is a little bit frustrating. And my initial thoughts when I saw everything was like, this is not good. Like, this kind of sucks because if this was a random match day, like if this was like day 4 in the middle of the match day season or the play or whatever you want to call it, just the regular season, it's like, okay, we miss out on a day. Okay, all right. But this was like the regional finals, and I understand that LAN is already set up. They already have a venue. They have to get this done as quickly as possible so the teams know if they need to be getting ready to travel or not, all that other kind of stuff. I guess as a fan and as somebody who wanted to participate and watch it, which is like, if you want to talk about the best day to watch other than a LAN, it's got to be the regional final day. It's like it's awesome to watch because there's so many storylines going into it, and this is like the final day. It just really sucked. And I, like you said, the contribution of all the scores getting leaked and people talking about who was going and who not before we got to see it, it makes it tough because you made this point on your stream last night. You're like, if I like didn't have the obligation of like having the watch party, it's like I wouldn't go back and rewatch it because you already know everything. Like it's just not something you would go back and do, and it reflected in the views. Like a lot of those people weren't going to watch because it's like, did my team make it? Oh, they did. Okay, cool. Whatever, we're on to the next. For people who make content on competitive Apex, then you're going to go back and watch it and you're going to pay attention. But it's the best of a bad situation, but it does suck and it does leave some questions up in the air. I saw a lot of people saying like, okay, well, so the security issues still haven't been solved, so what's going on with that? And there's a whole discussion to be had about like where resources are going to make sure that this is more safe, more secure. And the only reason I think that conversation isn't getting a little bit louder right now is just because everybody understands that there is a very quick time crunch that people have to turn around and immediately flip it back over into making sure this LAN is the best it can possibly be. So there's still a ton of questions going into this, and we'll see how it goes. In split 2. That should give them more than enough time, I would assume, to get things solved and put the right pieces into place. But as for right now, it was a little frustrating, but it's the best that they could do. right now.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, I don't know how all the things in the back end work, but the reason it was like the scores got leaked for anyone who wasn't, aware of what was happening, maybe you're not on Reddit or Twitter or something. There's a website called Apex Legends Status where all the ALGS stats get uploaded live as the games happen. And that's a great feature whenever we're playing live, but in a very, supposedly supposed to be secret regional finals that's going to be rebroadcast the day after, they were being uploaded live. And the guy Hugo who runs the site lives in France, so they're running it at like 9 p.m. over here in the States, which is like 3 4 a.m. over there for him. So no hate should be directed towards him. I mean, the guy's asleep. Like, what do you want him to do? I don't. Apparently there's also some like sort of way in the back end that like the ALGS people have to connect it to his thing in order for the like it to work. I'm not going to pretend that I know how all that works, but just point being, it just seems like it's a little bit of an oversight, and we cut them some slack because this was a very unprecedented situation that they were, we had no reason to be prepared for something like this happening, and like how do we respond if we have to do an offline broadcast? So it was a learning experience. Hopefully they never have to ever do it again. But if they do, at least we'll know that next time should be better.
that's the hope. That is the
Yeah.
hope. So let's get into the scores here real quick. I'm going to run through it. TSM, obviously, they win the day. It took 7 games to win. They won it on the 7th game. Second place was Legacy. Third place, Moist Esports. Fourth place, SSG. Fifth place was Team Elevate. Some other notable teams here. Actually, really all the other teams are notable, but some big ones down at the bottom. We have Optic Gaming, who got 8th. They needed a big day. And 8th, we'll get to the overall standings, but it just was not enough to cut it. The other big one, XSET, they were at 15th. They needed big day. That was not enough to cut it. And Furia down there at the very, very bottom, but they still managed to make land. So that was your scores throughout the day. And then quickly, before we get into the actual overview of the day, let's get into the overview and the final 12 teams that will be headed to LAN in Los Angeles. Number 1, we've got Dark Zero. 2 was Moist. 3, TSM. 4, Legacy. 5, DSG. 6 was Team Elevate. 7, SSG. 8, Luminosity. 9, Complexity. 10, Furia. 11, Cloud9. And 12, Oxygen Esports. Right outside of that, 5 points away, XSET, and a few more points away from that, Optic Gaming. So those are the teams. If you look at this top 12 right here, were there any teams that kind of surprised you that maybe you wouldn't have had before the season started? Or do you kind of feel like this would be where it settled other than the obvious XSET and Optic?
Before the split, I mean, on this podcast, I predicted XSET and Optic top 5. I'm pretty sure I said XSET wins Pro League. I think the only changes I would have made to this top, outside of maybe the order, I think I had DZ Moist in the top 5, but I think the others were XSET, Optic, SSG, maybe? I can't remember but I'm pretty sure I had DZ Moist. I didn't have TSM because there was supposed to be the Meat Lovers contest, and that didn't end up happening really. But pretty much the only changes I probably would have made was at the beginning of the season. I don't think I would have had Cloud9. I wouldn't have had Complexity. And I would have had XSET and Optic in there. But other than that, like the other 10, Oxygen, LG, SSG, Furia, E8, TSG, all these kind of teams, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't think we did an exact top 12 projection, but if I had to pick some, those probably would have been those 10.
Yeah, so if we look over here at, let's go back over into the final day and talk a little bit about some of the storylines there. Obviously, let's kick it off with the winner, TSM. They hit match point at game 4. They just seem to be having a very TSM-like day, a TSM day that we're accustomed to, where they were consistently just getting good placement and getting some kills with it as well. And then they were able to close it out. It's almost just like you put a match point in front of them or DZ is going to find a way, and they found a way.
Yeah, their lowest point total day or game was a 4-point game. That was like their one bad one. But other than that, I think they had like 4 double-digit games. So they were cranking on all cylinders. And at game 7, I will say a lot of people are like, oh, it's so scripted for TSM because, like, yeah, they did get the Zeus zone. But at the same time, like, the games that where they, like, for example, game 3 and 4, where they ended up getting 12 and 21 points respectively, they're landing at Lightning Rod, and it was a devastated Coast and Echo HQ pull. They're not like the worst possible pulls like a Cenote probably would be for TSM, but they're not good. Like, they're still super far on the south side of the map, where TSM's all the way on the north side. So, like, yeah, like the last game where they got the Zeus zone, like, yeah, they I mean, it was close to the POI. They got Prio, but at the same time, they popped off in some other games where they completely lacked it. So, you just got to tip your hat. That's what TSM does.
Yeah, so TSM, obviously, they come away with it. Any other teams in the top five that you wanted to kind of point at and note about their performance on the final there?
Shout out Legacy. Those boys still cooking. They were actually my pick to win regional finals. When the official live broadcast was happening, that was my pick. They didn't start off with the greatest two games. Like, they had 7-2. So after those first two games, which still did count, by the way, the games from that last week, they did count. They started off slow, but then they picked it up big in game 4 when they got a win. So they ended up finishing second place overall. In fact, the final 4 games, I think they placed top 3 in 3 of them. So shout out Legacy. They balled out. Moist, they placed third. SSG, E8 in the top 5. Moist, SSG, Legacy, TSM, and that final game, they were all already on match point. So any of them in that final game could have won it. Moist just continues to have a dominant performance, especially after a really slow start from them last week. Like, last week, the first 2 games, they got 19th and 17th. They had 2 points total. So, the break definitely helped them out a little bit. They bounced back mentally and kind of got it going. But then SSG, I got to shout them out, because once again, every time that man Phony is in a match point lobby, he will reach match point and he will have at least one game to try and close it out. He's only closed it out once when he was on ESA in that NA Regional Finals of Split 1 last year. But it just continues to hold true. Like, I don't know, I don't feel like people give that man the credit he deserves, because when you stack him up against all the best IGLs, he is up there with Zero and Hal in terms of consistently always being a threat on match point. Like I said, the LAN win hasn't been there yet, but if you're looking at this kind of history of every time he's right there, you got to wonder at what point will he be the one to close it out. So, yeah, shout out to all those teams, because they had great days. Same with the E8 too. They didn't really ever have a chance to close it out, but a team that a lot of people were doubting at the beginning of the year, and they showed up.
Yeah, it seemed like actually the only people who weren't really downing them were people who were coming on this show. It seemed like a lot of people talking about E8 were saying, like, I actually think they have something cooking right now. Like, Zach is in the lab and he's working, and it proved to be true, because now, they are headed to LAN and it's going to be a great time for them. I wanted to take a quick look at XSET. XSET was obviously a team that everybody probably had going to LAN. A lot of people probably had winning. You mentioned yourself, like, a lot of people look at this team and they say this is the pillar for consistency. They will always be consistently good, and this season just did not go well. Like, what was the problem this season for XSET?
I think there was a lot of them. Like, I do think that we somewhat underrate the difficulties of having to add a new teammate, and I'm not blaming that on Koi or the boys or whatever, but, like, you got to think about, for them as a team, every split basically they've had to pick up a new teammate. Like, year 2, and every year, I guess, not every split. Year 2 they had Guild when they were Team Liquid. He gets poached to NRG, so then they pick up Sykes. Then he goes to DZ, so now they pick up Koifo. Like, they're just kind of having to constantly rotate thirds. And whenever you bring in somebody new, like, there's just a learning period where you got to kind of get to know their play style, what they're good at, what they're bad at, how to improve, how do they fit within the team, how do you build chemistry, all that stuff. So I think that was maybe something that just took a little bit longer than they might have expected, because although Koi did go to LAN at Split 2 playoffs, or no, it was a Champs. Although he did go to Champs, this is his first ever split of Pro League. Like, I think people, he got his flowers really early because he's nasty, and he definitely deserves it. But I don't think people realize how inexperienced he kind of is in the competitive scene. So I think there was just a lot of foundation work that they didn't have initially. They also then lost their POI because of their slow start, where Dark Zero comes in and is just like, we're going to fight you for it. And, like, they'd be dumb to not, like, leave, because DZ has so much leverage. They have nothing to lose, and you do. So that made things even worse, like midway through the split. Because think about it, like you start struggling, if you can just like kind of figure out what's going wrong, then you can try to adjust from that. But then instead you get bullied out of your POI. You got to leave and go figure out a new macro from a new POI. And then you're contested by Evolution. And then in the regional finals, Ape Gang wants to contest you. And so it's like all these things are just kind of getting thrown at you while you're also trying to fix the other issues. So there's all that. And then also Nocturnal mentioned that on Wig's podcast that they just had some IRL stuff going on. He didn't go into details, and that's not our territory to really know what was going on, but like it's a real thing. Like I think sometimes I feel like people forget that, like even for pro gamers, like this is technically their job, but everybody, there's sometimes where you do bad at your job because you're focused on other things that aren't related to it. And so that, apparently that was a thing as well. So I don't know. I think XSET will be fine moving forward. I've seen a lot of people ask, should they make a roster change? My answer was a resounding no. Obviously, I don't know any of their mindsets. I don't. Hodsick tweeted, the only thing you can do is keep moving forward. So my thought is that they're going to continue as a team. But you never know. Like when a team does bad, somebody might want to retire. Somebody might want to leave and get a better offer. There could be a lot of reasons that the team breaks apart outside of the, hey, we want to drop somebody. But my guess is they stick it out as a team. And they come back next split even stronger, and they figure that stuff out. So, yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to XSET too, when you talk about a new teammate, I don't like. Obviously, you're going to have more analytics on this than I will, but just looking at the stats, Koifel's top 10 in kills in his first real like pro league split, and I don't. It's hard to value in my mind how important kills can be because in my mind, I'm thinking like that's just a free point. But I guess at times, if you're going for kills, it could also put you in a bad position for a better rotate or to take a spot or maybe for the third party. So I don't know if that stat we just talked about like wins aren't a QB stat. But if you win a lot and you're a decent QB, people will look at you a little bit better, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
I think with Koifel, he's getting a lot of kills. Is it helping the team out in the overall sense? I'm not 100%. But he had back-to-back 17 kills, 12 kills in back-to-back weeks. That's 17 and 12 points in those standings on those weeks that, you don't have somebody popping off like that. Who knows where you are? A lot lower. So am I off base a little bit on how important those are? Like, am I overvaluing that stat?
No, I think it's a really good point. I mean, like not to, annoy the non-sports fans, but to bring it back to sports real quick, it's like, for example, Jalen Hurts, a lot of rushing touchdowns, but the context for some of them is it could be a 1 yard touchdown. And that's a little different than maybe like a 20-yard touchdown, right? Like one is a lot harder than the other. And so the same thing can be applied to any stat. Like you can't ever take a single stat or a collection of stats at face value because there's always context there. So I don't know. I haven't like fully gone in depth on XSET's VODs yet to know like, were the kills actually meaningful? Because like, for example, he could be getting those kills after his teammates are dead and he's ratting. And at that point, your mindset is very different. You're just trying to get KP. Some of those times where he's racking up kills, maybe like you said, they could be taking a fight that they shouldn't have actually been taking. And if they had a lower kill performance, maybe in that moment, they could have actually gotten some better placement, which, then maybe actually leads to more kills overall later in the game. So I don't know. But ultimately, I don't think that like, my initial gut wouldn't be that Koifel's kills are by any means necessarily hurting them. It's more so just like, okay, we know the kid's got insane fragging potential because the fact that your team didn't make land and yet you have a top 10 guy in the kill leaderboards. How do we just work around that now? How do we continue to enable Koi to frag out and put up big kill numbers while also figuring out how to stay alive as a team? Those are kind of the things that I'm looking for XSET moving forward because I agree with you. There, like those days where Koi was popping off and getting big kills, I don't think they were really getting top 3 in a lot of those game days, or a lot of those games on those game days. Like I think it was was it day 5? I think. Hold on, let me pull up exit stats from day 5. Yeah, Koi dropped 17 kills that day. Fun has 1. Nocturnal has 4. They have 22 kills as a team. So clearly as a team, they weren't necessarily getting a ton of kills. And once again, there might be context there if like Koi is finishing like damage that somebody else opened up or whatever. But even then, their best placement is 3rd. Their finishes in those games, 12th, 4th, 3rd, 13th, 9th, and then 10th. So like they only have 2 games inside the top 5 despite having Koi drop 17 kills. So it's a mix. There's, like I said, I can't give like a full detailed breakdown yet because I haven't gotten into the VODs. But yeah, it just felt like they didn't have that ability to like reach it deep in end games consistently.
Yeah, so it's just one of those weird things. We'll see what happens with XSET moving forward. If there was a team that had the worst outcome from this entire scandal, everything that went down with Destroyer 2009, in my mind, it has to be Optic. Because if
Yeah.
you look at the first 2 games that counted,
Yep.
fourth and second, and then all of a sudden the rest of these games nothing jumps off the page. I feel like it's so tough because you see these teams sometimes get into a groove, right, where they are playing so good on a specific day. You know, we saw EEC win an entire match day because of how on they were. And part of me wonders, like, looking back at Optic, being like, was this their day? Like, was this the day that was going to get them in? And then it all fell apart, and then they had to replay. I mean, they got a dead last in this day. So another team very similar to Optic. Anything that you could say towards Optic? Because I know early on they weren't getting a whole lot of like fair zones. But is there more to the story on why Optic isn't going to land?
Yeah, I agree that the reset somewhat screwed them over, but I don't think it's necessarily. It's weird because it's not like the reset fully impacted their performance. I don't remember where they were in games 3 or 4 where the cheating stuff happened and the games got canceled. I don't think 4 really happened long enough. But that said, those 2 zones were significantly better for Optic because they were barometer zones. But even more importantly was that Cloud9 was doing really bad on those first 2 games. While, like you said, Optic got second and fourth. On those games, Cloud9 had, I think they were like bottom 4. Sorry,
13th and
bottom 4.
9th.
Yeah. So, and I
Sorry,
don't know.
13th and 19th. Sorry.
19th, yeah. So like, and I don't know where that was exactly on the overall leaderboard, but they were having a bad day. We get the reset games, and instead of the zones pulling barometer side, we've got zones pulling over by Cloud9. They're landing at Coastal Camp, and they get a devastated coast zone, which is a solid one for them, and then an Echo one, which is literally like right next door. So they're like one of the first 3 teams that's going to get there. And they got big placement in both of those games. In game 3, they end up placing second. They actually rotated super quickly and basically got God spot all the way at the backside of Devastated Coast, like the last building on the water line, and they ended up getting second. They probably actually should have won that game and got 6 more points out of it against Moist, but Moist had a great bang ult from MT that kind of held Cloud9 off in the push, and then Moist just capitalized. And then they end up getting third in the next game, which is 7 points. So all of a sudden they get 21 points from those next 2 games, where the previous 2 games, like you said, 13th and 19th. So they were struggling. And so those 2 games, like I said, it's less that Optic didn't do great because, I mean, they didn't, right? They got 2 points and 9 points. So but 11 through those 2 games, it's like a solid thing to build upon, like the fact that they were in second place before that. The problem was that Cloud9 was doing really good. And Cloud9 doing good meant that Optic basically was forced into a win or go home situation, to where previously when Cloud9 was doing bad, they actually had the possibility of making it if they finished in second place because XSET was doing bad. And I think like Drop In Gaming was doing bad. So like Optic could have snuck in second. So yeah, it's on the split as a whole, man. They just didn't really adjust that well to the metas. Talked about this, where he was saying that they when the season 20 meta shift happened, they initially tried Skittle on Caustic, but Skittle's better at frontlining, and Caustic in this current meta is more of an anchor. Because the last time Caustic was meta, Gibby was the anchor, so Caustic was a lot more in the mix. But in this meta with the Bang Bloodhound, those 2 are your frontliners. Caustic sitting in the back. Noct is typically their anchor. So all of a sudden it was this weird role reversal where they were trying Noct on the Bloodhound or Noct on the Bangalore. They finally figured it out a little too late to put Skittle on the Bang or the Blood. Which ended up eventually, I think, having him on the Bangalore or the Bloodhound, sorry, with Noct on the Caustic. So it just took them a while to figure that out. They did. I don't know the exact stats on this. I actually plan to look into this a little bit more, but they did really bad whenever zones were pulling to the southeast corner of the map, those Echo devastated zones. And we got a lot of those at the beginning half of the split. So I'd be very interested to see, like, maybe they they couldn't figure out these new end zones of Echo and Devs because these are all new POIs, right? So it's not like this is a POI they've been playing for years where they kind of know how to navigate these end zones. These are new, and so maybe they just took too long to adjust to those. There's just a lot of stuff that kind of went wrong with Optic, and yeah, it sucks to see because they're partnered org. They're one of the most storied orgs in esports history, one of the most storied orgs in Apex history. And seeing them literally finish second at champs, almost winning it multiple times, to now not even making it to the next LAN, it is definitely shocking. If you told me that was going to happen before the split, I probably would have called you crazy.
It's one of those events where you look back on it and you just think like how close they were, like how close it was to happening. And then now you fast forward to this, and it's just it's very similar. Once again, we go back to sports. It's very similar to like the Eagles run to the Super Bowl. They lose in a very weird fashion at the end of the game against the Chiefs. And then this year they made playoffs, but let's be honest, they were not a playoff team.
They were not good.
And then they lose in the first round.
I think they lost like 5 games. So they were not good.
Yeah, so it was very bad. It was tough to watch. I know that, I mean, I would be surprised if any of these teams post any of that footage other than like maybe like small clips here or there. But was there any moment throughout this finals day that if somebody was like, I don't really want to watch, but if like maybe there's a moment they could go check out? Is there one that comes to mind for you?
I think you can largely skip to some of the end games. I think game 5, because once again, when I'm saying game 5 on the rebroadcast, technically it's game 3 because once again the first 2 games counted. Game 5, I don't think you really need to watch. It's a climatizer zone. The team like SSG lands there, they get in the top 3. Native has a pretty boring rotate to win the game. They get like 3 KP, so nothing really like fireworks in that game. But the 2 games before that, with Moist and Legacy's wins, I talk about it when I was in the little halftime show, but I was very impressed by the rotates they had to get to those wins. So maybe like skipping over some of the games itself, but just if you can see their specific rotates, I don't think they show either of them happening on the main broadcast because they were a little earlier, and you know it's not a fight or anything. It's just like them moving into a really strong spot. But I thought those were great rotates that kind of set them up for the end game wins. And the end games for both of those are really entertaining. So if you want to save yourself some time, you can skip to the end games for those. And then the last game where TSM wins, I think that's a really entertaining game, even if you know TSM wins, just because we reach a scenario where Moist is dead. They're on match point, but we have SSG, Legacy, and TSM all on match point in the final 4 with LG, Sweet, and Co. The only team not on match point, and Sweet and them have to win in order to extend the lobby. Obviously, we know they don't. TSM gets the win, but I think that game was still a really entertaining one nonetheless. It makes me sad that other people didn't get to experience it live like I did because I was stressed. I'm sitting here like I want LG to win because on match point I just want to see us go more games. Like that's always how I want to see it. You know,
you just want like it could be your favorite team, but you're like I want this to keep going. Like I just want this to keep going.
Yeah, and then even like the scenario of like, you know, an SSG or Legacy win, that would have been exciting too because like those are relatively, you know, different teams compared to like a TSM who always wins, or you know, once again we get to see TSM. There's just a lot of storylines there that are always great, even though the TSM one we've seen it so many times. I actually saw someone comment this, I think on the Reddit somewhere, where they were like, me personally, I enjoy watching a dynasty, and I was sitting there thinking like, man, whenever TSM and DZ are done and they're not at the top anymore, I feel like we're gonna like think a lot more fondly on how dominant they truly were, and it kind of actually made me appreciate their win a little bit more, just to see like a masterclass of like they're just that damn good, dude. Like
I think I agree with that in the sense that I don't like seeing one dynasty.
Yes,
I like seeing 2 happen at the same time, and each year they're trading blows. Like
in LeBron versus Steph Curry. Like, it's like who could win this year?
In the NHL a few years back, it was the Blackhawks and the LA Kings, and it was like whoever won in the Western Conference Finals or whenever they met in the playoffs, it was like they were going to go win the Stanley Cup. The Blackhawks won 3, the LA Kings won 2. So if it was one dynasty, I would hate it. I would disagree with that guy completely. But now that when it's 2 of them, I'm like, this is fun because you want to see which one gets the upper hand on the other one. And I think I think when we eventually see somebody else win, it is going to kind of feel weird. Like it's definitely going to feel a little odd, I think.
But I think honestly, it'll feel that much better at the same time, because imagine at this point in Apex, like let's compare it to say Valorant. Valorant has had a lot of different champions. Let's say Apex had like 6 different teams that had won lands by this point. Like it wouldn't feel as special when a new champion rises to the top. But being that team that can overcome the 2 dynasties and actually do it, I think it's going to become that much more legendary for the team that does. It'll definitely feel weird, like oh my, like because that'll be the first moment where you start to think like, is this when TSM and DZ stop their reigns? Or do they respond the next time and take their throne back? You know, like it'll set up that new storyline, but it will open up that thought of like, are they done for? Is this new team going to start their run of dominance? And so, yeah.
Okay, so here's a good question.
Mhm.
We have our 12 teams, and let's just assume these 12 teams from NA, one of these NA teams are going to be the champion, and it's not going to be DZ, and it's not going to be TSM. As far as an entertainment standpoint goes, which team do you think would bring about the most juicy entertainment / content / whatever you want to just grow the like which team has to win in your mind out of these 12 to grow the esport or grow the hype around Apex Legends esports? I've got my answer. I want to hear yours.
Are we talking about specifically from the NA teams?
Specifically
Or
NA.
anyway. Okay, because I was going to say, I actually have 2 different answers here. One of them would just be a team from a different region because, and it doesn't really matter who, because then we get a new region to win. But
Yeah.
in NA, and actually, I think if we're talking about grow the esport, new storylines, trash talk, all that kind of stuff, if Sweet wins a LAN, I think that would go nuts because Sweet has the brand size of a Hal or a Timmy or a Zero, like, but he also has the ego and he's got the prestige, and he's viewed as like he would be overcoming a lot of narratives about him of like he's been there, but he can't win, he can't close it out, like he's not that guy, he's a choker, whatever, you know, like that's what people want to call him. And they have all those narratives about him because he is at that level of like people want to talk about Sweet, you know. And so I think in that regard of what would like blow the esport up, Sweet would be talking so much trash. And then, you know, Hal and Zero would be responding with like, you got 3 more to catch up, buddy. Like, let's calm down there. They would earnings check him or something. But him winning would start it would reignite the war between that used to be NRG versus TSM, but it would now be all the Sweet fans who have migrated over to LG versus TSM. Because that has always been like, to me, that has been the most impactful rivalry in the esport apart from the DZ TSM. But the only reason DZ TSM is a rivalry is because they're the only 2 that win. To where Sweet versus Hal, NRG versus TSM was because they were both good, but also because they were the top 2 IGLs and they had huge brands and they liked to trash talk each other a lot. So
it's also like the video that they used to play every LAN where they'd bring Sweet and Hal.
No,
in.
yeah,
it's like that is the biggest. Yeah,
So like,
go ahead.
They would do the Sweet versus Hal, but even like TSM hype videos that Verhulst's brother edits, he always includes some clip like throwing a jab at Sweet of like NRG finishing 12th or something like along, or him like sitting there sad. Like they always throw in some little jab towards NRG because it's a rivalry.
Yeah, I have a different answer.
Okay.
As
really?
far as I do. I actually completely forgot about LG when I was looking through this, but I still think my answer would be pretty good. I think if DSG wins a LAN with Timmy's size, you talk about size of like and how much I think it could grow. Timmy winning a LAN and then having the pit bull that is designed being the trash talk leader, the videos that guy he makes his own hype videos. He puts those out.
Design's ego would explode.
Exactly. Like, he would pass out on the stage.
Sweets would too, but Design would go like he might pass. Yeah, he might pass out. Like
pass out from pure just trash talking. He wouldn't be passed out from like the moment being too big. It'd be him nonstop talking. He'd run out of oxygen and then pass out. And he'd just be screaming it at every single hater he's ever had because you know he keeps a book of all those haters he's got in the back of his mind. It's like that Ryan Howard gif where he's just writing down in his book whenever somebody does him wrong as he goes back to being a temp at Dunder Mifflin, that's what design does. And then you add that with the brand of Timmy and you bring that in there, and then the memeness of Enemy and like what he likes to mess around and do. Dude's putting out always something that makes me laugh. So I think that would be a team that I look at and I say, holy shit, because there's a lot of people who really like Timmy, but you got to remember, like, he played Valorant for a long time too. Like he's had a lot of different games on his resume that people just enjoy his presence, so they'll stick around and watch him play anything. Maybe that makes him a little bit more hardcore towards the sport, and he's already big, man. I mean, this guy's played with pop stars, bro. Like, Timmy is huge, so I think DSG winning would be gigantic.
Yeah, it would definitely reach a very mainstream audience because it's Timmy. And the story of Timmy, like the Team Sheesh days, being a content creator, the Golden Griefer days, to winning a LAN would certainly go crazy.
Yeah, so go ahead.
I was just going to say, too, I feel like that would maybe... I wonder what that would do for like Design's brand, because Design has like the ego, the trash talk of like the top guys like Hal, right? But he doesn't necessarily have the brand size. Like, I'm not saying he's got a small brand by any means, he's got a huge brand, but I wonder if that could like elevate him to a whole nother level of like superstardom.
I think it could. I think he has the makings for it, because out of all of the IGLs, and I'll still throw him in that category because I know technically, I guess he's like a co-IGL. Is that how they say it? Do they call him a co-IGL?
It kind of is, but I think at this point, I would say Design is more IGL than Timmy. Timmy was more at the beginning, but I think it sort of flips now where it's more Design IGL than Timmy. Timmy, like, it's weird because they're all still heavily involved. Like, Timmy does a lot with macro calls. Design's a lot more of the micro stuff. So they're co-IGLs, but yeah.
Yeah, so like you add that in, and it's like you look at all the other IGLs and what they bring, and it's almost exactly what Design brings. It's like almost to a T what he brings. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. I would love to see what his brand does if they're able to pull that off. So yeah, I just got a message from Connor inside the chat. He's watching right now, and he says, "Does Post Malone show up to the next LAN if Timmy wins?" That would be interesting too. That would be an awesome time. But yeah, so that would be my team right there. Okay, so everything is set. Final is done. LAN should be set. We've got everything to look forward to now. And hopefully the boys will be back next week. Anything else, AyeJHawk, before we sign off and send people on their way?
I know you're going to take this opportunity to try and slander my name, but I just want to say that my non-take that I once again threw out there that Furia decided to include in the hype video, where I said I'm not picking them to go top 5. I think they can make LAN, but they're not a lock. I mean, they made LAN and they finished 10th. So I think I got the take right. Like, they made it. I said they could. But they weren't top 5.
See, this is why I think you still hate Furia, because I didn't even mention Furia. I could have put it on a silver platter.
20th.
Yeah, but I didn't like put it. I didn't be like, "Hey, AyeJHawk, talk about this team you hate. They got dead last. You must be so happy." I didn't even say anything about Furia, and now you bring them back in. Makes me think you actually hate them.
No, I don't hate them. I will say, I was like very worried for them that they got dead last, because the only reason they actually did end up making LAN is that Oxygen and XSET sucked.
Yeah,
because Oxygen and Cloud9, they finished like 11th. If those 3 teams are placing inside the top 5 on the day,
they don't.
Furia might not make it.
Yeah.
Like if XSET is like top 3 and Oxygen, they're only 6 points behind in the overall leaderboard, and they place 16th. So if they're inside the top 10, and then Cloud9 is about 5 points back, so if they're inside the top 5, like there's a very realistic scenario where Furia could have missed it. So I was very worried for Furia. They scraped by, but no, I do not hate them. I'm glad they make it. I just wanted to say that, like, when I was being called out as a hater, my non-take was literally spot on. They could make it, they could not. It came down to the final regional finals where they had to secure their spot, and they placed 10th. They were not top 5.
Yeah, well, so you were correct. But You just
And I'm not trying to
keep
flex that.
coming back. Well, no, it sounds like you're definitely trying to flex
I'm
that.
not trying to flex that because once again, I picked XSET to win Pro League. I picked Optic to place top 5. I was dead wrong on those. I'm not trying to flex that. I'm just saying that clip was used in a hype video to suggest I was heavily doubting them, and yet I was spot on.
But you didn't even have to mention Furia because I was like, all right, we're done. Anything else? And then you had to bring, hey, just want to let you guys know I was right about Furia. They didn't make top 5.
I'm just saying, like, people are like, oh, like, you didn't pick them to go top 5. You're a hater. That's not being a hater. Like, they finished about where I kind of figured they would. And, like, that's good for them. They made it to LAN, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter where you finish in NA Pro League. The Dojo didn't even technically they weren't even a Pro League team, and they placed 4th on LAN. So that doesn't even matter. All that matters is you make it to LAN. I just wanted to bring that up to illustrate the fact that, like, if I give a non-take, if I'm not glazing a team like crazy, saying, "Oh, they're the best," that doesn't make me a hater.
Yeah,
there's not this extreme world that we live in.
I will say this about you, AyeJHawk. I appreciate your realism when it comes to a team because in the early days of this podcast, it was like pulling teeth to get anybody to say anything negative about any team or any player, whether they deserved it or not. And then Finn jumped off the cliff and was like, I don't think NRG's making Sunday. And then we went too far. Then we had to reel it back in. But early on, I remember like, all right, guys, who's our winners and losers of the week? And Enoch did not want to name a loser because he was like, nah, I know these guys too well. I don't want to say it. I appreciate the fact that you will just say what happened because in our mind, with the media that we watch in sports, you have to do that. Like you gotta say what you see. And I appreciate
I love the XSET boys. I love the Optic boys. Like I got to, talk to Dropped and do the interview for my video. I got to meet all the XSET boys, except I didn't think I met Koifel, but I met Fun and Knock and Hodzik and all them at LAN. Like I love those teams. Honestly, like they're some of my favorite teams. I really wanted to see them go to LAN, but I'm gonna make a video about them. Like that's it. And once again, I'm not gonna make some video that's like drama farming and all this stuff, which they don't really have a lot of drama either of these teams, quite honestly. But this is a big time team. Like let's be honest, they had huge expectations. They did not live up to it, and that needs to be talked about because this is how you build storylines in sports. This is how you build storylines in esports. You have to talk about the failures in order to set them up for the comeback.
Exactly.
And honestly, we need people. I know that people get clowned for when they doubt teams. We need people to have those takes because those strong takes make that when your take gets proven wrong, it makes it that much more sweeter. I kind of wish I actually had said this on the podcast before Champs. But when I was at Champs, someone asked me before the tournament started, they're like, do you think that the dojo is going to make the finals lobby? And I said flat out, I don't really think so. I don't know. They're contesting Alliance, so their POI is in flux. They've got a play style that historically is a little more like volatile, like all these kind of things. And so my real take was I didn't think they were going to make finals. They end up placing 4th. They proved me dead wrong. That's why the name of my video is The Dojo Proved Everyone Wrong. And at the end of the video, I say they proved everyone wrong, including me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was wrong. I didn't think they could make it, and I didn't think they'd succeed.
It's also shitty too. It's like terrible showman, like to try to make a podcast and just every single team. So how do you think this team's going to do? Well, they could do good, but they could also do bad.
Which is what
it just sucks. Like that's what you said about Furia, but like it ends up just sucking if you do that about every single team. Like it's just not very fun to listen to. Like you want to have those takes, and yes, you can get clowned by some people, but as long as the sentiment is legitimate, like if you have like a real reason, like, hey, there's a real reason this team could just not make it, then that it's always better to have something like that than just somebody be like, yeah, I really like those guys. They should do good. What about this team? Yeah, I really like those guys. They should do good. And it gets tiring hearing stuff like that. So I do appreciate your honesty when it comes to it, as much as I clown you for the Furia thing. Also, Furia just dropped the sickest mountain lion hat. I'm copying that so fast, dude.
Isn't it a panther?
Let me have this one. Let me have the mountain.
I'm pretty sure it's a panther.
I'm gonna say it's a mountain lion. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make a clip and I'm gonna tag them in it of us talking about it being our lion, and I will see how they respond. I'll tag them in it and see what they say because I talked about the hat every time I tweet Furia or they tweet us, they always respond.
I googled it. It's a panther.
I'm gonna start a hashtag on Twitter. It's a mountain lion, and every time I talk about Furia,
It's a panther. I did just want to say though, to your point of like, having I remember I gave the take that I don't know if I fully said I thought they'd make land or miss land, but I was not confident in Oxygen before the split. They'd moved the POIs, they were going to like, command center and all that stuff. They ended up finishing 12th in the split. They narrowly sneak in. They had a terrible regional finals. They looked a lot stronger a couple weeks ago, but towards the end of the season, they didn't really have great days. But yeah, and that's a team that I would say I'm probably the closest with in terms of, not the close, but like I've I would say I've been friends with Vayne like almost a year at this point. So like I love those guys, but it was a legit team I had concerns about. So
yeah.
So and I feel like you said, the sentiment is what matters. As long as you're not like sitting here hating on the team, like I had legit reasons to be worried about them, and they overcame those reasons and they made it. So.
And it's also nice too when you have the legit reasons, because when they either overcome it or they find like they do run into that problem, I think it makes the fan base a much more like informed fan base, right? Because like when I first started this show, I knew a little bit about ALGS. They just asked me to host, and that's what I thought I was going to be doing when I started the Apex. And then it was like, okay, you're taking on a much bigger role now. You need to be able to like really know these players, know these teams, which this entire season has been like an adjustment for me, trying to really get deep into the weeds on this. And my analysis is nowhere near like your level. But when you tell me stuff like that, I become a more informed, I become a more informed listener and watcher of these games, and it makes me think of different things. When you mentioned Optic, because I remember somebody was in your chat on one of your streams saying, "Oh yeah, Optic, they're just not good anymore." And you're like, "Hey, hold on." And this was early in the season. You're like, "Hey, hold on. They have had really terrible zone pools," and I had never even thought about zone pools being a tough thing. As stupid as that sounds, I'm just thinking like, yeah, they're a pro team. They'll get in there, but you don't take into account all these different things. It made me more informed. So even though you like those guys, and we all like these guys, like everybody we have on the show, we like, you do have to have those takes. You do have to have those thoughts. You do have to have those opinions, because what ends up happening is you generate a much more and better informed fan base that can pick up on these things a little bit better. And then our sport grows because more people will come out with their own thoughts and processes on how these things are going down. And it made me a much better watcher this season, hearing takes like that. So I do appreciate that about your game. And as much as I like to clown you for hating Furia, it makes me a Furia. It makes me feel it makes me a better Apex Legends esports watcher.
I'm going to say two things right now. Number one, on the Optic zone things, I did say at the beginning of the season, but to any listener who might be like, well, they still did bad the whole year. At some point, like the zone thing can be an excuse for like 1 or 2 match days if you did get a bad set of zones, but at some point it does even out, and clearly Optic had other issues that was not just related to zones, because then at some point they did get favorable zones and they weren't able to capitalize on it. So there is that. It is a piece of the puzzle, but don't take that as like the whole puzzle, right? Because if you're one of the best teams in the world, you should be able to overcome bad zones. Like TSM does it. Obviously, they probably won't be your best games, but you need to at least be able to tread water so that by the time that you do get a favorable zone, you're in a position to capitalize on it like TSM can. So there's that thing. And I just want to announce this now. I'm not going to pull a Finn and pick Furia to win LAN just to like prove everyone that I'm not a hater. I'm not going to do that. Okay?
Don't do it. No, I respect when Finn did that. It actually made me more upset. I was like, don't do that. Don't.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I want everyone to know I'm not going to do that ahead of time.
Okay.
So if for some reason that word comes out of my mouth, I want you to call me on it immediately, because I'm not
if you have it, if you have a legit, actually, you know what's weird though?
As of today, I do not believe that Furia is going to win the LAN. Now that might change in the next 2 months or month of scrims for some reason, but as of today, that's not my thoughts.
Furia would be one of those teams though, and no, like all bullshit aside, Furia is one of those teams that if you said they weren't making Sunday, it would, to me, I wouldn't take it as like he's trying to be whatever, like he's trying to be contrarian, because they have had this like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type situation where they play super well and then they just completely shit the bed in other days.
Since season 20, the patch happened. They have a 1-point match day, a 25-point match day where they won, but that was also very low. It was one of those lobbies where it's low scoring because it was very competitive. There wasn't one team soaking up a lot of points, and that's not to take away from their win. It's just to say that like they didn't have to score 80 points to win. They only had to score like 50 something, I think. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I think it was only 50 something. Then they had a 10-point match day, which is solid. I think that's like 10th, and then a 0-point match day. So literally, they have only placed inside the top 10 2 times, and one of those was 10th, and one was a win. The other 2 were 20th and 19th.
Exactly.
So they've been
up and down. That's why I'm saying if you said that, I wouldn't take it as like, oh, he's hating. It's like a legit thing.
That
like,
take we'll see closer.
We'll see closer. Yeah, we got to see how international scrims go. Yeah,
yeah,
because a lot of things are going to change.
They've shown the potential to win a lobby, which matters. But now they have to raise the floor, because the floor is the concerning part here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gents, that should just about do it for this week's episode of the Apex the podcast. Once again, sorry for the weirdness of the last few weeks. Just a lot of craziness going down. Next week, we'll probably talk more about the patch note changes, because I think that's going to result in maybe some changes in comps. I don't know. By the way, was this played on the new patch, or was this played on the old patch?
This was the old one.
It was old
before
patch.
Bangalore got nerfed.
Okay, so there could be some changes coming. So we'll have to see how everything goes down with that.
Quick correction. Furia scored 67 points on their match day win. That's actually a really solid total. Third place was 45. So they had a really great day. What I said was it was kind of a close day. They had a really great day. I didn't want to take anything away from them on that one now.
Okay. There we go. He doesn't hate Furia. Confirm? Wait.
I do not hate Furia.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just checking. I had to make sure. I'm just making sure. Okay. All right. Well, we'll catch you guys next week, ladies and gents, for another episode of the Apex the podcast. Once again, shout out to AyeJHawk for hopping on once again.
Yes, sir.
Are you still TBD for LAN?
I'm still TBD, but I'll say this: I feel likely I will be there.
Let's go.
That's what I feel as of right now. There's still a chance I don't go, but I feel likely I will be there.
We gotta get you on Grab My Banner to do a draft. We gotta have you hop on. You need to do a draft.
We'll do a draft.
There's Kyle in the back.
We'll do a draft.
Yeah.
Kyle, your take on Mirage being a salesman was terrible.
That was Brian's take. Oh. That's why it was terrible.
Wait, what did Kyle? Did he do ballistic?
Oh, no, Kyle's take that was terrible was he said Mirage would be a great salesman.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
that's
what I said.
What you said.
Mirage,
okay,
yeah, Mirage would be a terrible salesman.
Okay, Mirage would be a great salesman. Don't fucking tell
awful.
me that shit.
He would be an awful salesman.
He would be great. He'd sell you whatever you wanted.
No,
he can't speak, Kyle.
Has no confidence. He'd bumble over his words. He'd give up.
He'd give up so fast. He'd give up so fast. Okay. Well, we'll have to have that. We'll have some content there. Shameless plug. Go watch Grab My Banner. All right. We'll catch you guys next week for another episode. See ya.